reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. At that time, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was hungry. The tempter approached and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command that these stones become loaves of bread." He said in reply, "It is written, 'One does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God.'" Then the devil took him to the holy city, and made him stand on the parapet of a temple, and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down. For it is written, 'He will command his angels concerning you, and with their hands they will support you, lest you dash your foot against a stone.'" Jesus answered him, "Again it is written, 'You shall not put the Lord your God to the test.'" Then the devil took him up to a very high mountain, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in their magnificence. And he said to him, "All these I shall give to you, if you will prostrate yourself and worship me." At this Jesus said to him, "Get away, Satan. It is written, 'The Lord your God shall you worship, and him alone shall you serve.'" And the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. The psychologists say that if you want someone to remember something, if you want someone to ascertain something in their memory, for something to stick out as being important, you oftentimes have to repeat yourself, or maybe restate your point in a variety of different ways multiple times. But whatever you do to try to get something embedded in someone's mind and in their memory, to get someone to realize that something is important and worth remembering, worth retaining, and worth ascertaining in their memory, you have to repeat yourself. The early scholars of the church, the theologians, the philosophers, the early popes, they realized this when they were compiling the structure of the Mass, and when they were sorting out which of all the many readings in the Bible, which would go on a particular Sunday, on a particular feast day, on a particular day of a week, and which ones would relate closest to each other. They did a great job with that, the early popes, philosophers, theologians, and scholars of the church, because they realized that it was true. If you want someone to pick a central theme and ride with it, if you want someone to remember something, you oftentimes have to repeat yourself and restate the common theme a couple of times. Maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4, but you can't just hear something once and be expected to remember it. That's the way it is for most human beings. And that is exactly how they structured the readings at Mass, when normally, almost every single day, every single Sunday, the first reading and the Gospel correspond. They're related to each other in some way. And sometimes, it's not all the time, but there's a great number of times as well where the second reading also ties in to the first reading and the Gospel. Because they have a central message, they have a similar meaning, they have a similar storyline to them. Maybe the Gospel brings up a prophecy that was mentioned in the first reading. Whatever the case might be, when the congregation hears something in the first reading, then again in the second reading, then again in the Gospel, it clicks. They remember it. They realize, hey, this must be important. This is now the second, this is now the third time I'm hearing about this at Mass today. This must be important. This must be something that I have to know, something I have to remember, and something that I have to live by. That happens to be the case in today's Gospel reading, in today's first reading, and today's readings. They're all intertwined, they're all related by one central message. And it starts in today's first reading when we hear of Adam and Eve, the first humans to walk the face of the earth, and we hear about the fall of humanity, the fall into sin, when they ate of the forbidden fruit. We hear that Adam and Eve were tempted by the devil. They were tempted by the serpent to eat of the fruit which was forbidden them. In today's second reading, we hear a great connection, a great tie-in between Adam and Jesus. Jesus is the new Adam. Jesus came to expiate the sins of all, because through one man's sin entered the world, through one man's sin was going to be acquitted. That was the correspondence between Adam and Jesus. We heard a very powerful, a very profound, a very meaningful second reading today that talks about the correlation between Adam and Jesus. And then in today's gospel reading, just as Adam was tempted by the devil, the new Adam, Jesus, is tempted by the devil. But the difference in this common theme of temptation, that's the common theme, that's what we hear about, that's what our memory is tricked into believing because we've heard about it multiple times now, temptation. We realize that Adam was unsuccessful in resisting the temptation of the devil. He ate the fruit, Eve ate the fruit, and sin entered the world. They were thrown out of Eden. A disastrous outcome occurred because Adam could not resist the temptation. But however, Jesus, when he was tempted by the same devil in a very similar manner, Jesus was tempted as well. And what did Jesus do? He resisted the devil's temptation. He said, "No, Satan, go away. Leave. You cannot put the Lord your God to the test." Jesus threw all these scriptures at Satan. And that is the central message of today's gospel reading. That is the central message of our Lent, is to resist the temptations of the devil, and just like he did with Jesus, the devil will eventually leave us alone. For a brief period of time, he will come back. He's always prowling around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. But we have to resist the devil. We have to resist him and his temptations and all his empty promises. We have to resist him, being strong in our faith. And how do we do that? We do that like Jesus did, by maybe reciting scripture at the temptations that come to us day in and day out. And another way that we can be like Jesus and unlike Adam in how we handle temptation and how we resist temptation is this solemn season of Lent. We began 5 days ago. We're only 5 days into Lent. Began on Ash Wednesday. Usually in Lent you hear about, what are you giving up for Lent? Oh yes, you have to give up something for Lent. You have to add something onto your life. But do we really know why we do that? Or do we just simply say, I'm going to give up chocolate. I'm going to give up video games. I'm going to give up social media. Or maybe, if you want to be really, really challenged this Lent, I'm going to give up watermelon. I'm going to give up something that's out of season. I'm going to give up something that I can't have. Or do we genuinely give up a real obstacle in our lives this Lent? But what is the purpose of giving up something for Lent? And if you have already completed these first 5 days of Lent, congratulations, keep up the great work. If you have not picked something yet, if you've already failed in your Lenten promise, if you want to change your Lenten promise after what I'm about to say, go, feel free to do that. We're only 5 days into Lent. There's no penalty for starting late, but better start late than never. But the real reason, the real purpose, the method of the madness of giving up something for Lent is, yes, to grow closer to God and give up those things that draw us away from God, but also, when we've given up chocolate, when we've given up video games, when we've given up social media, whatever it is that we've given up this Lent, when we've given up swearing, whenever those temptations are there, whenever we hear that our friend just posted a beautiful picture, and we have to like it, we have to comment. Whenever we hear that our best friend is online playing this video game, whenever we're presented with these wonderful chocolate chip cookies at work, maybe whenever someone pulls out in front of us onto the street, whenever we've given up swearing, eating chocolate, playing video games, checking social media, whatever it might be, when we're presented with these temptations, it's sometimes very difficult to say no and resist those temptations. But the point of giving up something for Lent is to resist and say no to the video games, to say no to the chocolate, to say no to the swearing, whatever it is that we've given up for Lent. We need to continue to resist the temptations no matter what happens this Lent. Because the real reason that we're doing this is just to grow closer to God, but also whenever the devil confronts us, like he did Adam, like he did Jesus, and he offers us this very, very tasteful temptation. It's very hard to resist temptation, but we know that it's leading us down the wrong path. We have the ability to say no and resist the devil in his tracks because we've spent years, 40 days every year, practicing the art of resistance, practicing the art of saying no. Sure, when Lent's over, you can go back to eating chocolate, you can go back to social media, you can go back to playing video games. You might not want to go back to swearing. If you've given up something like swearing, but it will better your life, then maybe you want to continue that past Easter. But there's nothing wrong with going back to eating candy, to playing video games after Lent is over, because you've already mastered the art of temptation. You've succeeded. You deserve to go back to those ways. They say it only takes 28 days to make or break a habit. Here we practice 40 days of resistance, 40 days of self-denial, 40 days of fasting, in which we give up something in order to practice saying no to temptation. So that when the devil, who is very real, who is very alive, comes and confronts us with the ultimate temptations in life, temptations to deny our faith, temptations to lead us down the wrong path and to lead others down the wrong path, we can say no. Because practice makes perfect. And we have already practiced for years how to say no to the small things in life. To say no to chocolate. To say no to video games. To say no to swearing. We've practiced. Even though it might be hard, even though temptations are going to be present this Lenten season, practice saying no. Practice resisting. Practice self-denial these next 40 days of Lent. So that when you are confronted by the devil and the ultimate temptation, you can say no because practice makes perfect. That's why we do it. Psychologists say that if you want to understand something, if you want to remember something, if you want to learn something, most often you have to hear it multiple times. In today's first reading and in today's gospel, we hear about temptation. We hear about the devil, the cunning devil, tempting Adam and Jesus, who were connected in the second reading. The devil still tempts us in both little and big ways. But the real challenge of our faith, the real challenge this Lent, the real purpose of this fasting during Lent is to resist the small temptations, so that when the big temptations arise, we have the ability, we have the willpower to say no. Go away, Satan.